Hey everybody, it is Dr. Vibe, host and producer of the Dr. Vibe Show, the host and co-producer of the monthly online show called The Good Men Project, and I'm also the I just co-host. There's so many things going on. I'm co-host of the monthly Men You Wanna Be Google Hangouts with Marie Roker Jones, and also Marie Roker Jones is my co-producer at the Good Men Project show. Also, you can catch episodes of my show at thegoodmenproject.com and also at the Black Life Coaches Network Facebook fan page, the #1 resource for Black Life coaches in the world. And as I always like to say, you're blessed and highly favored, you're a magnet for miracles, and you're a solution for someone's problem. Another special friend on our show tonight, and he found me out first. Usually I find people to get on the show, but he found me on his great podcast called serviceschange.com, which he co-hosts with another wonderful gentleman, Joel Schaefer. And it's Dennis Nappi II. He's a veteran of the Philadelphia Army National Guard. In 2002, he was deployed to Bosnia as a counterintelligence special agent, where he was part of the team searching for a terrorist cell actively plotting against U.S. forces. Upon his return, Sergeant Nappi was hired as a police officer in Newcastle County, Delaware. After responding to the aid of a 12-year-old boy threatening suicide, Dennis found his greater calling. In 2008, he was hired as a Philadelphia teaching fellow and assigned to a special education classroom in Southwest Philadelphia, where all of his training was put to the test. Dennis' first book, Service, details his experiences from boot camp to summer vacation, exposes some very serious concerns in our school today. We could go on for a long time tonight, but Dennis is going to be on our show tonight. He's going to be talking about his latest book, and also going to be talking about the relationship between Americans and police. And I think one of the major themes in America this year, even though I live in Toronto, Canada, is the relationship between the police and Americans, not just of Black America, but just in general. So welcome to our show, Dennis Nappi II. Dennis, how are you?
I'm doing great, Dr. Vibe. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's so wonderful to be able to talk with you again.
You know, it's when we chat, we don't talk, we share. So it's going to be another wonderful sharing experience tonight. And I'm just going to sit back and listen and just ask you about some things because your heart is good and your heart's in the right place. And I'm really looking forward to
Thank you.
having you on my show after you were so kind to have me on your and Joel's show. So outside of the little bit we shared with our audience, can you give a little bit more background about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. I can go into to a little bit about I guess my journey, and the full title of my book is Service: A Soldier's Journey, Counterintelligence, Law Enforcement, and the Violence of Urban Education. And I wrote this book in 2008. As I said, I became a teacher in the school district of Philadelphia, and it was probably a worst case scenario. And I was so moved by it on so many levels. I was angered. I was sad. I felt joy at times that I felt I needed to put this in writing. And then I realized as I was writing this about what's going on in our schools here, I couldn't tell my full story unless I explained, well, I was a cop before I became a teacher, and that's why I reacted this way. But I couldn't fully explain the cop part of my book unless I said, well, I was a soldier. I worked in counterintelligence with the Army, and that's why I think this way. So the book ended up going from, a small little book about, teaching in the city and how hard it can be to a memoir of about an 11-year journey from the Army to the police force to the school district of Philadelphia. And
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, yeah, it has been just quite an incredible journey for me.
Excellent. Why did you get involved in the Army?
As a young child, I always just loved the idea of being a soldier, and but it was something that my parents forbade. They said you're never joining the military because there was a real bad stigma about joining the military. Oh, only kids that can't go to college join the military. And and as we got older, times were tough, and we were financially strained. My father was self-made. He was self-employed, and money was often tight. And we went to a college fair, and my mom and I realized that there's just no way we're going to be able to pay for college. And she looked at me, and we looked at a recruiter at an ROTC booth. And she says, Dennis, what do you think about ROTC? And my eyes got real wide. I said, I can join the Army? I was really excited about it, and the rest was history. I had ended up looking at ROTC, then I looked at active Army, and then I ended up going with a guard unit because they ended up giving me the best options that I was looking for. I didn't just want to join to join. I wanted to come out of there with a specific skill. And so I waited it out and did my homework and found the exact position I was looking for.
That's good stuff. Now, your mother said, "Hey, you want to join the army," but what was your father's reaction? Because you said that they really weren't for it in the
Right.
past. What was his reaction?
Yeah, it was about the same as my mother's. That they were very supportive of me. My parents have always been supportive of me, and I owe a lot of who I am today to the support they gave me as a child. But both of them, it broke their hearts. It terrified them. They were expressed so much pride in me for the journey that I went through, but I know it terrified them, whether they said it or whether I just saw it in their face. If I was shipping out somewhere, I remember looking at my parents and just seeing how scared they were, but how brave and how tall they were standing for me because they didn't want me to worry about them worrying about me.
Where was the first place that you were sent to outside of the U.S. in your service in the army?
Well, I did a small training op in Germany, but my first really my only operation in 2002. You know what? Let me just backtrack a minute and give a little bit about my military background.
Sure.
And let's see, was it 1997? I joined the Army National Guard as an intelligence analyst, and our job was basically to take all the incoming intel. And at that point, I was being trained to plot it on a map and say, here's where the enemy is, and based on the equipment that we're seeing and the way that they're moving, we think they're going to do this. And so I went through that training and I enjoyed it, but I wanted something more. And somebody presented to me with the option of becoming what was called a counterintelligence special agent. And the
Wow.
way they sold it to me was basically, hey, you're going to go be 007. That's not really how it was, but as a 17, 18-year-old kid,
Sure.
you hear that, and I was immediately just hooked. I want to know what this is. I want to be able to go out and do it. So I applied and applied and did all this paperwork and got accepted to one of the courses that they offered to be trained as an agent. And they went through the whole background investigation. They had to do an interview. They spoke with everybody that I knew, to give you your clearance and stuff, and to make sure just everything was clean and basically that nothing was going to come up in my past that somebody could use to blackmail me for information, in the future. So I got that position, and you wear so many hats as a counterintelligence agent. They're looked at as the guardians of national security. They investigate espionage. They investigate terrorism and any national security violations. Somebody loses classified information, somebody misplaces it, somebody steals it. It's our job to come in and investigate and find out not only what happened and who did it, but what effect is that now going to have on U.S. interests. And how vulnerable are we now because of it. So I went through that training, and then in a post 9/11 world, I was deployed in that capacity to. We were deployed to Bosnia, and we did initial train up in Germany. But I guess our real journey started when we got into Bosnia. And as you mentioned in the introduction, I was a part of a team that was looking for a cell that was a terrorist cell that was actively collecting intelligence against U.S. forces when I was there.
And how old were you when this was all going on, man?
Started at 17. I deployed, I want to say I was 2002, so I was 21, 22 years old.
Now, were there many agents of your age at that time? Because I think that's outstanding, like that you're in that sort of role at that young of an age. Is that common?
It is common. Well, I'm sorry, the Army, I think you have to be at least 21 years old in the military to hold that position. So when I deployed, I'm trying to think how many agents I had on the ground. There was a handful of us, and we ranged from my age. I wasn't even the youngest. I think we had one guy younger than us, but we ranged from about that age to probably 30s, mid 30s.
Phenomenal. What was that experience like for you?
It was life changing, and I preface in my book, I've never been to war, and I don't claim to be a combat veteran, but I fought my own battles both emotionally and at times physically, um, and it's had a lasting effect on me. But I know that whatever I've been through, it doesn't compare to what other soldiers in the desert have gone through and continue to go through. But my deployment was significant to me, and my job when I started out was acting as an analyst, and I'm I was going through all the information on, who's out there, what are they doing, is there a threat to U.S. interests in Bosnia? And I started finding reports that, hey, there may be an issue in this one town. We had some incidents where some of our patrols were getting surrounded and minor things like that. And I was pretty much told, nah, there's nothing to worry about there. These people don't like us. Don't worry about it. And so I kept digging and digging and digging and pushing and pushing. And a couple other people that I worked with started getting behind, this idea that, hey, maybe there's more to it than we think. And we started noticing a particular vehicle that started following our U.S. patrols around in a particular town. The same vehicle is always following them. And I know, as an agent, well, that's surveillance, and you don't conduct surveillance on people just for fun. So we really started to suspect that this vehicle was possibly in the planning stages of an attack against U.S. interests. So we grabbed the occupant of the vehicle, and it turns out he had been to terrorist training camps. We looked through his passport and stuff, and was planning an attack, so to speak, against U.S. interests. So as we're going through investigating that, we had an opening come out on one of what we call a tactical human team. And I was I volunteered for and got the privilege to go out there and actually run that team. And our job was then to go out into the towns and dressed in civilian clothing and just talk to people and say, hey, what can you tell us? Who doesn't like us? Who wants to hurt us? Where they hide? And all that good stuff. We're looking for informants. So it was a really, really amazing experience just being out in the country and getting to see the people, over there and listen to the stories of what they went through during their civil war. It was just absolutely horrible. So it definitely changed me forever.
How long did you spend in service?
My contract was a 6-year contract, but I was actually deployed in Bosnia for about 10 months, I want to say.
Wow. Wow. And after Bosnia, how long were you still involved in the Army?
I got out pretty quickly. I was actually under what was called stop loss at the time. That's basically, we're at war, we need you, and we're not going to let you go, until the war is over. I think they told me my contract ended indefinitely, but somehow there was a glitch. I was like, come on, you don't understand that at 17 years old when you sign up, or that they can call you back up to 8 years later.
Really? I
You
didn't
know,
know that.
yeah, you have an 8-year obligation to the military. Now, again, I don't know if things have changed. This is based on when I was in. But you have an 8-year obligation, and there was a big issue right when Iraq kicked off. People that were out for, I had a buddy who was out for I think 4 years. They showed up at his door with orders and sent him to war. You don't realize that at 17 years old. You may sign the contract, you may say you understand it, but you don't know what it is to be home, to have a family, to be separated, and then to be pulled back into it. Fortunately, I never got called back, but I was afraid that they were going to call me back. The way I got out, I was up there training one weekend, and my readiness NCO said, hey, they lifted stop loss saying your contract's expired. You need to re-up right away. I said, nah, here's my stuff, Sergeant. Thank you. And I turned my gear in, and I went home. I got out.
Was was it hard to leave, and do you remember your last day?
It was very hard to leave. I remember I ran all over the place trying to track down all my equipment, that I needed to turn in order to actually get out that day. And I just remember listening to a specific song. I think it was called "Days Go by Dirty Vegas." On my drive home, about 2-hour drive home. The Army is still a part of me. It gave me such a wonderful gift. The training that I have, I use in my job every single day, and the confidence and courage that it showed me within myself. It was very hard to leave, and I didn't realize how hard it would be to leave until I was actually out. And there were a few years afterwards, where I was really struggling with just assimilating back into civilian life, that I came very close to going back because I couldn't function. I felt like I couldn't function in normal society. It was very hard.
Well, that's quite a revelation that you couldn't function. Was it that difficult, and what were the challenges you had readjusting to society outside the military?
Well, I dedicated a chapter in my book to this called assimilation because they train you for war, but they don't train you how to come home. And I preface this by saying again, what I went through was mentally stressful, but it was nothing compared to what so many other soldiers go through. And when I came home, I remember, two incidents come to mind. I was engaged at the time, and my fiance said, "Hey, the circus is in town. Let's go to the circus." And I snapped. I said, "Are you nuts? Do you know how easy it is? What a great target that would be for terrorists to blow up people at the circus? We're not going to the circus. They're going to kill us if we go there." And I said it matter of factly, and she looked at me like I was nuts. And I'm looking at her like, "How do you not understand that it would be a great target to blow up the circus because there's so many people there?" So that was kind of the beginning of it. And when I really realized I was having a problem was we went out to a bar with some friends, and the music's playing, and all of a sudden I start looking around, and the room's getting smaller and smaller on me. And I kind of backed myself to a wall, and I'm going, we need to go right now. And she's saying, "What's the matter? What's the matter?" I said, there's about to be something bad that's going to happen here. I don't know what it is. Let's go, let's go. And she looked at me like I was nuts. And I guess in some ways I was, but I was trained to always be in control, always watch your exits, be prepared for anything, and this was just too chaotic for me. So I ended up pretty much running out of the club, leaving her standing there. I locked myself in the car for 2 hours, and I kept saying, "Go in and see her, go in and see her. You've been away for so long," and I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I was too scared to go back in.
Wow. How did you overcome?
Took it took a long time, and I still deal with things from time to time. I don't think being a cop helped me initially because I was back. I had a reason again to be on guard and on edge, and it justified it. So, I guess that was the start of my coping. I became a police officer and went through all that training, and I said it's okay to act this way because the threat is real. The threat is out there. I deal with it every day. But when I left the police department and became a teacher, that's when I really had to look at myself and say, hey, the cop way and the soldier way, that's not going to work anymore. I need to find a different way to relate to people and to relate to my environment because I can't go on this way. So it was really a lot of listening to my thoughts and paying attention to my anxiety and working at it to try to make myself comfortable. And now, I mean, my wife is so supportive of me. If we go out somewhere and I have a bad night, I look at her and say, hey, I'm having a bad moment. And she says, okay, go put the kids in the car or whatever. She'll send me on an errand or something to do so I can get out of there. And that makes all the difference in the world. But it was a process getting to that point.
Understood. Now, becoming a policeman, was that a safe transition for you coming from being in the military?
Yeah, I mean it was what I knew. I remember the first day of the police academy. One of my drill instructors got down and whispered in my ear. He says, "Feel good, Nappi? You remember what this is like?" And I just smiled. I said, "Yeah, I feel right at home." It's just that structure that, I don't even want to say it's hard at that point because you've been through so many different training. My buddy and I that I met during the academy, we made a game out of it, and we just had so much fun going through our training. And then when we became cops and we're on the street, there were fun aspects of it, but obviously it wasn't. I realized it wasn't for me after a period of time, and moved on.
What were the positive and not so positive aspects of your time being a police officer?
I love the camaraderie of being a cop and knowing that the people that I work with are going to risk their life to protect me, and I'm going to, even if I don't know who they are, which we've all done as cops, and knowing that there's people that I've helped. I've taken things, the extra step. I remember there was a minor things sometimes, a girl being harassed by somebody who was making false accusations, and this girl kept getting locked up time after time after time, and I eventually realized, hey, this other girl's lying, and I was able to put some information in our computer system so the cops would have that knowledge and stop harassing this poor girl who was, the suspect just kept lying about her. So it's those little things where you think, I think I made a difference and actually helped somebody today. It's such a great feeling.
Nice.
The drawbacks are, the fear. I mean, it's a scary job. I remember hearing calls on the radio saying, hey, guys, I need help right now, or step it up, or, sometimes you don't hear anything. So you're flying at 100 miles an hour to try to get to your friends. And I know there were times in my head I'm going, I don't want to go, but that's my friend, and I know he'd be coming if it were for me.
Right.
Because you don't know what you're going to roll up to, if somebody's going to be shooting at you or what. So, that was tough. And those were I think it was moments like that where the training I got paid off and kept me alive. that made it hard when I left the police department because I can't always have the edge that I used to have because it's just not acceptable. It's not acceptable for a teacher to act like a cop. It's not acceptable for me to be in the grocery store to talk to people the way maybe a cop would in certain situations. So it was tough.
When did you know it was time to leave the police force? Because Philadelphia is a tough town, and I
Well,
found that out through a number of people I've had on the show from Philadelphia, including yourself. But when did you realize it was time to move on from that and to go into teaching? To me, is not as an easy transition from military to police. I think it's maybe a little bit more challenging a transition to go into teaching.
right. Well, I was a police officer in Newcastle County, Delaware, which is just south of Philly, and I always say people would commit the crimes in Philly and then go hide out in my neck of the woods in Delaware.
Okay.
So it was still it was still a challenging job, but my hat's off to the officers in Philly. They have their hands full, but um, you know, I um I had a supervisor who just rode me, and for unnecessarily. I mean, he was just all about report writing, which up until I met him, I was always the top of my class, praised for my report writing and my attention to detail. And this guy kicked everyone back and sent me. I had all this extra work to do from him, so that was starting to stress me out. And then I realized I didn't like arresting people,
Mm.
and that's necessary sometimes. It really is. But there were certain situations where I'm going, either number one, I don't know who's guilty in this situation, or I don't know if I don't know if an arrest is the best possible solution. If I'm taking a dad out of the house, now he can't see his kids, he might lose his job. I started wondering, is a counseling or therapy or job training a better option than putting the bracelets on somebody? So I had a whole bunch of little incidents like that, and then I had a 12-year-old boy, which was, I guess, one of my final moments. He was suicidal, and I responded to the call. I was there, first one there. I was there by myself. He locked himself in a car with a butcher knife, apparently.
Oh,
And so yeah. So I mean, I was real scared for him. And when I got there, I just see this little kid sitting in the car, and he starts cussing me out right away. Go away, f you, get out of here, cop. I don't need you. I didn't see the knife. I didn't know where it was. So I'm thinking, what could I do? Well, I could get, some equipment. I can, jimmy the door open, or I could break the window and pull this kid out if he pulls out the knife, and I can hit him with my taser, if he's presenting that much of a threat. I know he's a 12-year-old boy, but someone with a knife is someone with a knife. So all these
sure.
thoughts are going through my head, and instead I said, you know what? I'm just going to talk to this kid because I had had a lot of success dealing with people that were having, mental issues with mental illness. So I started talking to him, and I noticed over the course of our conversation, about 5 minutes, he started to give me a little bit more and more information. And I ended up talking him out of the car. And at that point, I said, you know what? I can now grab this kid and handcuff him, thump him a couple of times, and say, you're wasting my time, and throw him in the back and take him to the crisis center and call it a day. But instead, I kept the conversation going. I let him know about my authority. I said, I need to search you. And, I told him I was going to search him, and he let me. He didn't fight me. He just turned around. He says, okay, Officer Nappi, that's fine. So I did a thorough search to show him, please don't try anything, but I was respectful to him. And in turn, he just opened up. And then he ended up telling his mom, Mom, I'm not going to the crisis center unless Officer Nappi goes with me.
Oh,
And
super.
so it was an amazing feeling. And we got to the crisis center, and my shift had ended about an hour ago at this point. We got to the crisis center. He says to me, I'm not talking to the doctor unless Officer Nappi comes in with me. So
You adopted someone all of a sudden, eh?
yeah, yeah, pretty much. So I was a neat experience to be in there and be a part of that, and to make that connection. And I realized, you know what? I used to think of myself as a police officer. I kind of felt like they're the garbage men in society because they got to deal with all these problems that nobody else wants to deal with until it's too late. And after meeting him, I started thinking, well, maybe instead of garbage, looking at as taking out the trash, we can try to recycle. We can try to reach people when they have these problems before it gets too late. And that's why I really decided I wanted to be a teacher. And I definitely got, trial by fire because I got hired as a Philadelphia teaching fellow, and they threw me right into I'm a special education teacher now, and they put me into a special education classroom with learning and emotional support students in Southwest Philadelphia.
Whoa.
And it was the Wild West. I mean, they were middle school kids, but yeah, they they've tried everything to get me. They really did.
What rewards are you getting from being a teacher?
Over the years, I can look back and I remember the conversations I've had with my students. What I've learned, I remember when I started out, I was a cop and a soldier, and I was still me, but I didn't have the skill set I have now, and I learned how to relate to students that were different from me. Growing up in an urban environment because I listened to them. They would start talking about things, and I'd ask them, "What does that mean? Explain it. Basically, explain your culture to me." And they did, and I listened, and I listened to how maybe certain things that I said or did were perceived as disrespectful, and in turn, I explained to them how certain things they said or did were disrespectful to me, and we really bonded. And I guess just going through that and knowing now I walk into pretty much any classroom or any environment and I don't have to fight for respect. Normally it's months before students will start warming up to you or they'll start listening to you or stop cussing you out or stop threatening you. I walked into a classroom in Chester, Pennsylvania, and that's at one point was the worst school district in the state. I mean, it's bad. And I'm there for about an hour, and one of the aides there looks at me and she says, "You've been around us before, haven't you?" I said, "What are you talking about? What do you mean us?" She says, "You know what I mean, us." I said, "Yeah, I've been teaching for a few years now." And she looked at me, she says, "You're all right, Mr. Nappi. We're not going to give you a hard time." And that, I mean, I could have gone to my car and cried when she said that to me because I'm used to fighting to get that respect to say, "Hey, I'm here to stay. I'm here to help. I just want the best for everybody here." And when she said that to me, it was just such a wonderful feeling knowing that, hey, I've been welcomed and I've been respected.
Well, we'll spend the rest of our conversation on another subject you're very passionate you wanted to share about,
Mhm.
on the relationship between Americans and their police. So
Yes.
the mic is yours. Please share with us. It's a very important topic, not only for Americans, but I think for individuals all around the world in regards to police forces.
Yes, and thank you for this opportunity to talk about it.
My
I
pleasure.
wrote my book for. I'm sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
My pleasure. Go ahead. No
Uh,
problem.
Thank you, thank you. I wrote my book, for three reasons. The first reason being I wanted to obviously spread awareness about the problems going on in education in Pennsylvania and the United States today. I also wanted people to understand the thoughts and feelings of a soldier and how hard it is to be in the military and what we deal with when we go home. And the last piece of my book, I wrote was to explain what a cop goes through. And I tried to be as honest and insightful as I could into my thought process and my feelings in the book. And I designed it to read like a novel, but it's really me. I want people to know that cops are human beings, and I just want them to get at least what I saw and what I felt through that, because what I'm witnessing right now, and this piece was made clear to me when I was a teacher, when my students would say, "I hate cops. I want to kill cops." And I'd say, "Why?" "Well, these cops locked up my mom and they beat her up, or this cop lied on me, or this and that." There is such a problem right now where, as a police officer, I was proud to be a cop because I wanted to help people and I wanted to make a difference. I spent my whole life thinking, "Oh, I'm going to be a police officer. I'm going to protect people." And I think a lot of cops come into it with that mindset, with that goal. But then, you get beat up once or twice, or you see somebody get hurt, or you just watching the training videos. Well, it's your life, and that doesn't justify some of the things that are going on in the world today. Absolutely not. And I've written some articles. I wrote an article back in June. It's on my website called Cop Wars, and it talks about the growing divide between citizens and police. How there is such a propaganda machine right now about against police officers. Every time a cop is aggressive, it's on film. Now, we don't always see the whole film. Sometimes the cop is wrong. Sometimes the cop is justified, but the film was just edited to show, yeah, the cop's beating somebody up who doesn't have any weapons on him. Every situation is different, but what the message that's being sent out there is cops are bad, and there's certain media outlets that are saying, the police are taking over. Get your guns, get ready, don't let them take your weapons, and that terrifies me. That absolutely terrifies me. And in this article that I wrote in June, I gave a warning to the police officers saying, look, because I think back then there was a shooter up in Canada. Actually, he killed 3 police officers in late May, early June of last year. And I published this article warning officers saying, hey, you need to watch out. We need to change our approach. And I think within 2 days of writing that article, we then had a shooting in Las Vegas. An individual walked up to 2 cops sitting in a restaurant in a pizza shop. These two, a man and a woman, walked up to these 2 officers and shot them, killed them in cold blood, and screamed revolution. And then ran out, and there was some shootout in, I think, a Walmart, and they ended up dying. And then within a week, another guy assaults a courthouse in Georgia with all sorts of explosives and guns, and the police were able to stop him. He injured 1 officer at the courthouse. But my point is not that we're in a state of revolution, but that there are people that believe we're in a state of revolution. And what I keep saying to officers and to citizens alike, and I hope this doesn't come off as, I'm not trying to sound intimidating or threatening. When you push police, they're trained to react a certain way. So if you come at a cop aggressively with force, they're going to react with force. And this is going on in my neighborhood right now. The state trooper that was just assassinated a month ago now, they're searching for him 14 miles from my home right now. And I wrote an article discussing that as well, saying, be careful, what you're wishing for, because if you think that we're going to make a difference by violently killing cops and having these violent protests, we're not. Violence is going to beget violence, and it's sometimes the harder thing to do because there's feelings and emotions that are involved, but that's not going to give you the result that you want. You're not going to achieve peace by fighting with the police, and that doesn't discount maybe your reason behind it. I've seen some horrible things and some poor decisions by law enforcement today, and I'm by no means defending those actions. And I put the burden in my book. I put the burden on police officers. I dedicated a chapter to cops and what they can do. And I said, you need to get out there, and you need to integrate yourself with your communities. Go back in the schools. We used to have what was called officer-friendly programs, where they'd be in the schools meeting the kids. Hold citizen police functions. Get out there. But not only that, when you arrest somebody, you've got all that time when they're in the back of your car to make a connection. As a counterintel agent, I was trained to look at everybody as a potential source of information. So that guy that, I don't care how bad he just fought you, that you're bringing back to the station right now for processing, he may be a criminal today, but tomorrow he may have information that you need, or he may be that guy standing in the shadow you don't see with a gun. Now, if you treated him right and you thought, well, maybe he can help me one day, he may not pull that trigger. I'm not saying he won't, but you got a greater chance that way. And then we can start to work together, because now cops start asking, who did it? What happened? What's going on? I don't know. I didn't see anything. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to work with police. And instead, we're being further divided by everything that we're seeing on the internet and on the news. And we need to look past that. We need to say, what do I want? What do I want out of this? Do I want to continue this battle going on? And it runs deep. I mean, I know there's a lot of pain on both sides, but we need to find a way to move past that pain. Not forget it, not discount it, but move past it so we can move forward together. Because the cops aren't going anywhere and the citizens aren't going anywhere. So until we can find a way to kind of bridge that divide, we're going to keep seeing more targeting, shootings of police officers, and we're going to see more, people getting hurt and getting in trouble in these violent protests. It's so upsetting to me.
Your thoughts in regards to, and thank you for passionately sharing what's on your heart in regards to this issue. Where do you feel, if any, police forces are getting it right, and where are they not getting it right?
I'm going to give a shout out to Upper Darby Police Department. It's where I grew up, in Upper Darby, Pennsylvania. Simply from his Facebook page, and please take the time to check it out. He's on Twitter and he's on Facebook, Upper Darby Police. He is on there regularly throughout the day, and I think he might be out of town right now or something. But normally I'm getting regular information from him. He talks about, the crimes that are going on in the neighborhood, but he has a sense of humor, and he jokes about things, and and he's on there every day, and he's talking to people that comment to him. And after a certain number of months, he started putting up, "Hey, we're looking for these guys who burglarized this house, or who robbed this woman." And then a day later, he posts, "We got so many tips from all of you. The guy's in custody now. Thank you so much." It's working. It's community policing. It's citizens and the police working together, all because there's a cop with a Facebook account who's got a sense of humor, But he's reaching out, showing, "I'm a human being, and I care about all of you." Is what I get from what he's doing. I'm always saying, "Hey, I love what you're doing. Keep it up." I mean, I think that should serve as a model, and we need to take that a step further as officers and interact with the public in that same way. Maintain officer safety. That's your first and foremost, responsibility. Once you're safe, scale it back. So that's what I see what Upper Darby, police department is doing right, and I'm really proud of them for that. As far as a specific police department that's getting it wrong, I don't really have a specific department,
I'm not
but I can
necessarily
think.
I'm not necessarily in a department, but just from where you sit, just general policing, not specific. You don't have to be specific, but do you see areas where just in general policing can be improved?
Absolutely, and that's in your day-to-day interactions with the public. Again, I understand a lot of times you roll up and you need to have that authority and that command presence. But my students' biggest complaint is that the cops don't treat them with respect. They say, "We're just standing on the corner," and all of a sudden they roll up and just start yelling at us to leave. And I wasn't doing anything. Now, sometimes my kids probably were doing something, but sometimes they weren't. There's that assumption that's being made, and nobody likes being stereotyped or assumed to be doing something wrong. And nobody likes being yelled at. And if there's no threat, there's no violent aggression. Could they have gotten maybe a different result? They walked up and said, "Hey, what's going on, gentlemen? How are you?" Talk to them for about 5 minutes and say, "Look, we got a complaint. I need you guys to clear the corner." That might go a different direction, and I understand maybe it takes more effort. Maybe you're afraid to let your guard down. Don't ever let your guard down. But that student, is going to grow up into an adult one day who's going to have the strength of a grown man. And my students who see that negative interaction from cops, some of them have access to guns, or they're going to have access to guns. So that seed is planted at that very young age. I spoke to a student of mine the other day, and we were talking about police and racism and racial profiling. And I was trying to explain, like, look, not all police officers are bad, and we need to make a difference and change our approach. With the same conversation we're having now, and he looked at me and he says, "Look, my grandparents they were marching in civil rights movements, and they were beat by police officers." And I mean, it goes so deep, and it has such an impact on people. So what I'm saying now is just how you talk to people. Think like a counterintelligence agent. I may want this person to help me one day. Let me treat them with respect. You don't have to like them, but treat them with respect, and I think that'll make a big difference.
What is your message then to communities and the public in general when it comes to policing and police forces?
Again, I think we all need to work together. And we're seeing so much rhetoric online, on some of these channels. You know, there's a revolution. We need to stand up. And what I say is, well, non-compliant doesn't have to come in the form of a violent revolution. Instead of fighting the system that's not working, try doing something differently. In a non-confrontational time when tension is just on a random Tuesday, go to your police department and ask to speak to your community services officer and say, "Hey, we'd like to put together an event that's going to help bridge the divide between citizens and police officers. We want to build that sense of community. What do you have in mind?" And then put it in their lap to go ahead and do their part. And then you as a citizen, then go out and organize with everybody in your community and say, "Hey, we're going to try to work with the police now. And we're going to go have, and if the first thing you need to do is go to a meeting where you can air grievances so you can move past it, then do it. Just set ground rules. So because at the end of the day, the goal is to work together. Try to find opportunities to work together. Because like I said, at the end of the day, nobody's going anywhere. And this just cat and mouse game, or let's fight and that's not getting us anywhere but dead. And I'm tired of hearing about people getting killed. I've lost friends. I have children now, and I have students. I don't want anybody to end up getting hurt on any side of the team. So I think that when we see these things happening, instead of saying let's get even, let's bring justice about, we need to be saying how could this have been prevented, and what are we going to do differently starting right now?
What is your biggest fear when it comes to this subject?
It was realized, that trooper was assassinated, close to home. And then what just happened up in Canada last week. I mean,
Sure.
that is my biggest fear is, you know, people do think that they're having a revolution and are killing people in uniform now. Um, that's it right there. I don't think all hope is lost. I just think we have the power at any time to do something differently. And it's hard, and it's easy to say, well, they should do it. They're the wrong ones, but everybody keeps saying that.
Sure. Well, as before we wind down and let you go and get some rest and relaxation from your family and and also your family and the school family, what is the the service of change site all about?
Oh, sir, thank you for asking that. Service of change, our motto is small changes among the masses can have a massive impact around the world. And we just try to bring, with our writing, and we do a weekly podcast. We call it the Change Cast, a podcast for change, where we interview helpers, people that are out there making a difference. And our hope with Service of Change is to inspire people to go out and do that one little small thing, whether you're deciding to say something nice to everybody that you encounter that day, or you're going to change your diet, or that one little thing that you can do. So we offer articles with experiences and things of that nature, and we do our weekly podcast where we're talking to different people, who can share that information and that advice. And I also use it as a platform for my writing and for my books and for some of the other books that I'm going to be publishing of friends of mine in the near future. Just to kind of promote that work as well.
Excellent. Well, we'll just wind it down here. Do you have any
hmm
final words you'd like to share with our audience?
Uh, you can make a difference out there, and I always say, be that change. Figure out what it is that you want out of this world, and start acting that way. Um, Things seem impossible sometimes, and with the career that was laid before me when I was 17 years old, I was 90 pounds soaking wet. There's no way I would have been able to do any of that stuff, at the time, and I did it. I believed in myself, and as a former police officer, people judge me and look at me and say, "Oh, you're a cop. You must be this way," and I'm not. And that's why I encourage people, read my book and make that judgment for yourself, and then understand that, well, if Dennis is this way, well, I'm sure there's other cops that are that way. I'm not the only person who acts that way, and that kind of humanizes people and makes it easier to say, well, I'm going to deal with somebody like that and work together with that person.
Great. Well, where can people get the book?
My book is available on Amazon.com. There's links to it through my website at serviceofchange.com, and I have the paperback version, and I also have a version on Kindle that's available for $2.99. And then there's also the link on your website, where my book's available through my own page, and I have a discount code available for your listeners if they're interested in it. They just got to. It's a no fancy words or anything, so if they have a pen and paper, they can write it down. But it's all capital letters, BD2TSSHT. And if you miss it, you can send me an email. My email address is on my page, and I'll happily send you the link, the discount code. And I'll give you $5 off the book.
Well, and I
So,
think you've given me permission also to actually put the code as part of the post.
yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
It'll be included in the post for this I'll call it a change cast. Look
There
at
you go.
can I use that just for this?
You sure can. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, Dennis, I'd like to thank you for taking time to share with us. Keep on doing the excellent work. And
Thank you.
I don't even think it's work anymore. It's just passion for you.
You're right. It is. It sure is.
It's not work. So look forward to, and again, the mic is open anytime you'd like to be on the show. The
Thank
mic,
you very much.
it's a pleasure. And also, as I said before, our show started tonight, a big hello and shout out to your co-host Joel Schaefer, a good man, really good
He
man.
sure is. He sure is. I'm sure he's listening. Thank you.
Good stuff. Well, it's Dr. Vibe here. I'm your host and producer of the Dr. Vibe Show, host and co-producer of the Good Men Project show that's on once a month at thegoodmenproject.com, one of the most viewed sites in the world for men to share. Also, you can catch selected broadcasts of this show at thegoodmenproject.com and also at the Black Life Coaches Facebook fan page. And the Black Life Coach is the #1 resource for Black Life coaches in the world. As always, we like to say you're blessed and highly favored. You're a magnet for miracles and you're a solution for someone's problem. God bless, peace be well, and keep the faith. Bye-bye.